Hi there.
Hey there.
Kevin, it's great to meet you. Oh, now I can see you too. Awesome.
Yay. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Thanks for bearing with us. I
Oh,
think the biggest techno
no problems.
in the world.
Happens all the time. usually it's me. So, yeah, no worries at all. So I know we got 20 minutes, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to pre-record this, and I'll be posting it on YouTube just right after. So, yeah, that should work well. Okay, so Kevin Eastman, welcome. It's really great to meet you. In this interview, so first off, a lot of my viewers are indie comic creators, and a lot of them are starting out on either their first comic or, maybe it's their 10th comic, but they're still in the indie scene. And so you're someone that I think a lot of us learn from. And so I have had a lot of great questions from some of my subscribers. And I'm curious, back at the beginning, what made you decide to go the self-publishing route as opposed to working with a publisher?
Well, it was a couple factors. Initially, when Peter and I formed Mirage Studios, we teamed up, kind of balancing each other's strengths into one unified sort of style, and tried to get work, penciling, inking, anything from a lot of mainstream publishers. And so we got a lot of rejection letters. But we still love the medium of comic books, and we were both fans of underground comics publishers from, say, the late 60s, early 70s, guys like Von Bodie, Richard Corbin, Robert Crumb, things like that. And so in the mid-70s, Dave Sim emerged as went from what they called underground comic books, which are sort of more adult-themed books, into what we call ground level or independent comic books, which was Cerebus the Aardvark. And around that same time, Wendy and Richard Pini launched Warp Graphics and started self-publishing ElfQuest. And there were a number of other people emerging, and so we saw that as a real opportunity via the direct market, which was a non-returnable market. And so we felt that was our inspiration, that was our way in, so that even if we only sold 100 copies or 200 copies, it was a relatively small investment, which we did early crowdfunding, borrowed money from family and friends to do the first issue. But we felt it was, we were so passionate about wanting to be in the business, so passionate about following in the footsteps of our hero, Jack Kirby, and many others that we were so inspired by, that we just had to do something, and self-publishing was the way to start. Even if it was a complete failure, we were going to do it.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought up crowdfunding too, because that's been a really big thing as of late. You don't know this at all, but I just finished crowdfunding my own comic book and raised $27,000 to do it. It was my first successful one, and there are many others that have been much more successful than me. And so,
that's congratulations. No, that's honestly, we did this month, which is the 35th anniversary of us publishing the first issue of the Turtles. May 5th, 1984 was the first issue was released. We did a Kickstarter last year for a new project I did with my friend, co-creator David Avalone, called Drawing Blood. And it's sort of got a sister comic book called The Radically Rearranged Ronin Ragdolls, we can talk about in a minute. But we did a Kickstarter last year and raised the money, and so we're starting independent publishing. Our first issue comes out on the 22nd, next Wednesday.
Very cool.
So, yeah, congratulations to you, and it's very, we're blessed, that there is that kind of vehicle like a Kickstarter, Indiegogo, that it's,
right. Well,
it's the only way possible for me to do it as well. So
yeah, and that's I was looking back at, at Cerebus too, Ninja Turtles, and self-publishing. There was a route to get published. Now it seems almost like it's easier with crowdfunding. I'm curious, if you started today, and you probably already answered that question, would that be the route you would go, is crowdfunding?
100%, because it's things have changed so much in our business. When we did the first issue, it was I think the main line of communication between comics fans and comic stores and that industry was a weekly newspaper called the Comics Buyer's Guide.
Yeah.
But there was no internet, no other really mechanism to get in touch with other brethren or sisterin or whatever to get the word out on your creation, your comic book, besides mainlining right to the comic store themselves. And it was the shop owner that then passed on the word to his or her customers. But yeah, it was we'd definitely do as much promotion as we could on our Facebook page and get the word out there on our social medias, and then we'd do a crowdfunding to hopefully raise the money to do it. So.
Oh, that's great. So I watched a little documentary about you a few nights ago, and something that you said that really stuck with me is that you were talking about the plan, like, oh, if we can make $2,000 each a month, then we can live off of that. At what point did it go from, hey, this would be a cool idea, fun project, to there's a pathway to making a full-time living here? Where did that switch happen?
It was issue 2, because in issue 1, it came out in May of 1984, as mentioned, and I still had a full-time summer job. I was cooking lobsters in Maine, and so Memorial Day to Labor Day, we, growing up in the East Coast, you service the tourist trade, so you work 94 days of summer and try to save enough money to survive the winters. So over the summer, we sold out of the first printing of 3,000 copies of issue 1 of the Turtles. We did a second printing of 6,000, and then that fall, after I'd finished work, Pete and I would talk and meet regularly, and he said, people keep calling and asking when we're going to do a second issue, and we were sort of like, we'd never thought of doing a second issue because we never thought we'd sell enough of the first issue. So at this point, we solicited to the direct market, which is a 3-month process of you put in your solicitation and then you get your numbers back 3 months later. So in January of 1985, we got the numbers back, and it was for 15,000 copies, which, some quick calculations, we figured that's where we came up with the number. We'd make about $2,000 each pre-tax, and we could find a cheap apartment and draw comic books full-time as a living, eat and pay our bills and draw full-time. So it was, with issue 2 of the Turtles, we became full-time comic book artists, and that's really, I say in the millions and billions of blessings that have experienced since then, that's still the ultimate moment for me, was when Peter and I got to be full-time artists writing and drawing comic books. It was January of 1985.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's really inspiring too, because you hear so often that there's not money in comics, just do it if you love it. But it's like, it'd sure be nice to love it, doing it for a living. So it is really inspiring. Yeah.
It's a hard juggle to get there, because even like not to digress too much from your other questions, but it was the best job I ever had was during the process of working on issue 1 and issue 2 of the Turtles was I had a job at a hotel part-time, but I worked the night shift from 11 at night till 7 in the morning. So after you checked in a few people after, say, midnight, I had the whole night to sit at the front desk and draw comics. I was getting paid a minimum wage, but I was able to draw.
Nice. It's cool how that works out. I don't draw. Well, I draw poorly, but with writing, it's kind of the same. You got to find places to fit it in.
Yes.
So. Yeah, that is good. So another thing that has struck me too about not only your career but a lot of comic creators is the collaboration, and it seems like things can go terribly wrong depending on who you're collaborating with, or they can go very, very right. I was curious, what makes a good collaborator? What should you be looking for?
Well, Peter and I in particular, we were very lucky in that. He's a super nice guy, and I'm usually a pretty nice guy. We both had a great passion and love for Jack Kirby and similar heroes that we admired. But we I guess showed each other a great deal of respect and consideration in talking about an idea. And we were exploring this idea, but it was very unique at the same time because, for example, in the early days, people would be like, oh, so you're 2 guys and you created the Ninja Turtles. Who's the writer and who's the artist? And it's like, well, we both write and we both draw. So it was sort of, we not only had to mind melt as far as writers and help we craft the story, so we could bounce the ideas back and forth and craft the story, the origin story in issue 1. But when it came to actually doing the physical pages, in those days we were trying to blend 2 different styles, and so we worked in the same room and we passed the pages back and forth. We would pencil together, and once all the pages were penciled, with some of us penciling on part of each single page, then we inked it in the same process. So it was a very unique and special and awesome collaboration. And so we continued that system for the first couple issues, but then, once things really took off, we lived in the same town, so we'd see each other every day, but we didn't draw in the same room as much. But it was a healthy dose of respect and consideration, and working through the creative issues, and sort of being willing to stand your ground when you need to, but knowing when to give in when you are smart enough to recognize a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't win all the time. The great idea is the point. Yeah. That's what has to win, is the good story.
Awesome. I really like that. This is slightly off topic, but your hat, notice that is the first ever drawing of a Ninja Turtle, correct?
Yes.
That's awesome. I'm like, where can I get one of those hats?
KevinEastmanStudios.com. Woo!
All right.
Yeah, if you go to I have my main website, which not only lists where we're going to be for conventions, or if I'm selling prints or original artwork or those kind of things, but we have a few items like this, and this was something that we started putting the first turtle drawing on some of our tour T-shirts and things like that, and then a friend of mine gave me a Usagi Yojimbo hat that had this great Usagi embroidered, and I just fell in love with it. So we found the company and did our first turtle hat. So yeah, you can, and they come in.
I like it a lot. Yeah, I will post a link to your website in the description too, so everyone can check it out. So I kind of want to shift gears here to your current projects. I know you mentioned there a little bit. What do you have going on?
The current project we have is it's called Drawing Blood, and it's co-created. I came up with the original idea of, and I started keeping this sketchbook diary probably 10 years ago. It was sort of notes and things that I remembered from experiences that I had, in say Hollywood or animation or movies or publishing or comics in general, going to conventions and things. Funny anecdotes that I thought were kind of cool and neat to remember. And then at the same time, in all those years of going to all the shows and things, I would meet different friends, whether Frank Miller or Howard Chaykin or different other Bill Sienkiewicz, and usually at a hotel bar after a convention, everybody would be talking shop and talking about different experiences they had. So I started sort of piecing all these ideas together and thinking like, well, this would make a great story if you came up with a sort of fictional version of me that you could sort of do maybe perhaps a Spinal Tap like take on the comic industry, and someone that had created a concept that became hugely successful, but he stumbled and he bumbled and he blew his money, and people, was just had this crazy rock star like experience, and now he was trying to find his way back to that creativity that he had lost. And that's when I met David Avalone, who's the official co-creator. We started mind melding ideas and experiences so that it became more of a recollections and reflections, and we call it the completely fictional true story of Shane Bookman and his experiences. So it's set in the world of comic books, and it is a bit of Spinal Tap meets Breaking Bad meets the movie Amadeus meets this stuff, and we put our character Shane through some paces, and it's fun. So we call it the completely fictional true story of Shane Bookman in Drawing Blood. So it's
nice.
It's some fun stuff in there.
That's really cool. Yeah, and that's great that you've had success with crowdfunding too.
Yes.
Yeah, to me, I see that becoming more and more of a big part of indie comics. It's already, the more people that get used to it, it's been good. So, So another question. I think this is a difficult one, but breaking into comics is difficult, and everyone always loves to hear breaking into comics stories. But I'm curious about staying into comics, getting into that second issue, third, fourth, fifth, and continuing things. Do you have any thoughts or advice on making that happen?
Well, you're right. It's a difficult question, but the answer is still sort of, you sort of end up in the same place, and it depends on how you're lucky enough to continue that process. In that, say, we're going to try to, through the Kickstarter, we raised enough money to do the 4 issues of Drawing, the first 4 issues. The whole series is 12 issues. Do the first 4 issues of Drawing Blood, and then our stretch goal was the one-shot of the Radically Rearranged Ronin Ragdolls, the sort of 1992 comic. We did a recreation of that as part of our in-story parody, a book within a book. But it comes down to the fans, and we solicited for it. We had good numbers on our first issue. The second issue, the numbers have gone down, which is pretty typical. And we expect that we'll see where we end up, and if we're able to create enough of a following to support our creation of ongoing issues, we'll continue to, everything we make in the books we're putting back into the future issues of the book. But if we can't, we'll go back out, we'll reach back out to crowdfunding, to the people that helped us raise money for the first 4 issues. We'll see if they like the story enough to come back and help support the next 4 issues and perhaps the next 4. Yeah. But the comic market is, it's an interesting place, and it's tough, and it's competitive, and there's a lot of, I see those issues of Diamond previews every week, as we all do, they're every month rather, and it's like just a massive amount. No, it's weekly, I think, isn't it? But anyway, yeah. But it's a massive amount of material, massive amount of product, and it's a pretty weighty business for not only Diamond, but the comic stores are supporting. So it really is trying to reach your fans and do the social, and if they support it, that will give you the foundation to continue doing it. But it's a struggle.
Yeah.
And thank goodness again for crowdfunding, because that's really that's what gave us our start.
Yeah. That's great. It's and you bring up a topic. I know we're kind of headed toward the end of our time here, but getting feedback from your customers, I know that's been again for my subscribers. There's been a lot of talk about that and how to handle feedback, sometimes negative, sometimes positive. You have any thoughts or advice on how to handle criticism from your fans?
Well, it's I'm trying to think of the right advice, because it's if they're honest with you and they tell you exactly what they think, then it's important to sort of, I think, to listen to them, but at the same time, it's sort of, you have say if you have 30 fans and they all like different things, like maybe fans 1 through 5 love Star Wars, but fans 25 through 30 hate Star Wars. Fans 6 through 10 love Doctor Who, and the other fan, so yeah. They're getting their own things that they gravitate to, things that they like, and the same goes for what their assessment of your project is going to be. Their opinion is based on what they like and what appeals to them. Mm. And so it is something that you want to listen to, you want to be aware of, but at the same time, you don't want to change your idea to say, try to sell more comics, or please, say if you make changes X, Y, and Z and it pleases these 15 people,
yeah,
then these 15 people hate it now because they didn't. So it's almost like you have to take it, process it. If it's a structural or character development or things that they want to see more of, things you can sort of put into your vision as the things you might want to change to the overall project. But you still at the end of the day have to stay true to yourself and your original idea, because that's the only moniker. I mean, a great example is I work with the incredible Tom Waltz on the IDW comic series.
Yeah.
The series editor is Bobby Kurnow, and as we go through and we plot, and as we've now been doing this, coming up on issue 100, which is coming out in November. So we've been doing 100 books since 2011. And the thing that we always arrived at any story meeting that we had, which was twice monthly usually, is that we might have somebody going, hey, if you killed a character, hey, if you did this, you're gonna get more sales. And we're sort of like, well, yeah, but you know what? what's important to us is telling a great story, and we
Yeah.
sort of set things up, and the way we're maneuvering the characters in our chess pieces as we move through different arcs in the story, it has to evolve naturally and organically to make each story work in that position. So it was sort of a real careful thing of sort of, saying, no, we're not going to kill a character off in the next arc just because there's going to be more sales, because it doesn't make sense to the story we're telling now. So it's sort of a lot of balance. So.
Yeah, and that I think echoes what you said about collaboration. The good idea is king, and you want to hear those things, but you got to know what ideas to take and what ideas not to take, I guess. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. I promised everybody, I did a live stream the other day, and I said I'm going to get through this like a professional. I'm a huge Ninja Turtle fan. I don't know if you can see on my wall, but I'm like, I'll save that statement for the end so I don't embarrass myself. But it has been a real pleasure talking to you, so I really appreciate that.
No, it's absolutely been my pleasure, and don't be shy. We're doing, this has been a crazy week, and I appreciate, you juggling some of your schedule stuff, but I'd love to come back and talk to you again at any time. I really enjoy doing this stuff. It's a great way to make new friends, reach fans, and discuss these ideas, because I have my opinions, whether people like them or not. They're my opinions. But it's been at the same time, we do a lot of shows, we do conventions and stuff, and I love the fact that shows like this and events that we go to, I get to thank my fans, because I have the greatest job on the planet, because I have the greatest fans on the planet. I really wouldn't be able to get up every day and sit at that desk over there and draw. Actually, working on a cover, working on the new Batman Turtles crossover, so I'm working on cover 5 right now.
Nice. Very cool.
I have that job because I have great fans. And I love the fact, I sort of mentioned that I love that you get to see Turtle Power, which was the documentary that friends Randall Lobb and Isaac Fisher and those guys made. Those guys did such an incredible job. They spent 5 years, their own money, and they shot interviews, and they produced such a wonderful documentary. I really think it's a wonderful, captures so many awesome elements of the aspects of the Turtles' history, and that, the super fans that they interviewed, to the different creative processes and people that were involved in it. So I'm glad you get a chance to see it. They did. Yeah. I can't say enough, but they did a fantastic job with it. So.
Yeah, it is great. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Hope to talk to you again sometime.
Okay, sounds great. Have a good one. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.